It's hard to sit without one leg up. I have a hard time sitting like that.
I don't have a choice.
Okay.
All right.
Literally cannot sit the other way. So
It's fine. I'll just hold it.
Tie it up there.
that's as far as it goes.
That's all right. That's where it belongs.
That's where it belongs. That's where mine is.
This hurts. It doesn't feel good. Welcome back to another episode of our message recap, the show where we are going to recap the fantastic message that we had this past weekend.
It was long.
It was long.
I went late both services,
It
and
was
I was
long.
like, "Oh, great! I'm gonna get roasted during the recap."
It was about. It wasn't in the 30s. It was in the 40s.
I know.
Yep.
I just learned from the best.
Yeah.
Well, somebody should go through. This is someone's job on YouTube, okay? Somebody go through all of the messages from 2014 until currently, and I would like you to have two columns. One column for Kevin, one column for me. Now, obviously, you spoke a lot more, so we'll need to weigh out percentages.
Percentages.
But yeah, so it's even.
Yeah.
Percentages of messages that you gave that were over. You want to go 35?
30. Come on. 35.
30. We're gonna be 100% on both of them.
Okay.
Hold on.
That's
You each spoke at least once per month. So, right?
No,
Yeah.
not way back in 2014.
Oh,
no. We
okay.
need to go through the whole YouTube archive. So percentages, I think over 35.
Over 35. How about this? Go through and find out which one was the longest from me, which one was the longest from you, and see who did
But
it.
that might be because the topic necessitated it.
See, here we go.
Oh my god.
Here we go.
Fine, you can do that too, but someone else's job is to do percentages. How many over 35 minutes, and then leave a comment below.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with the message recap. Right?
And nobody's going to do it.
Somebody do it. Somebody do the math. Okay, anyway.
It ain't going to be me. So somebody figure it out. Anyway, we did, you spoke second week of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
And talking about the Holy Spirit, we dove in. Like that, we dove in.
First.
Talking about the weird stuff.
Oh, snap. We didn't. Okay, it was probably a little bit of a play on words, the weird stuff. I mean, I think everything we talked about was weird, but it probably wasn't as weird as people either thought we were going to get, as weird as some other people have gotten.
But I think it's a good way of describing it, because
Yeah.
what the Holy Spirit does is not natural.
Yep.
We don't view it as natural.
Yep.
The weird stuff was catchy, but supernatural would have been a really good term. These are everything he talked about was supernatural. Even when you got to the gifts of knowledge and wisdom, it's not. There's a lot of wise people now.
Yep.
It's knowledge you had no way of knowing, but you know.
Yeah.
It's so it was all supernatural. If you've been a Christian for a long time, you don't think most of that is weird at all. But no matter if you've been a Christian a long time or not, some of it's just weird in the fact of, and you said, speaking in a language you never learned.
Yeah.
And that's just weird, to speak in a language you never learned.
We didn't get into this, but that's why we do recaps. When I was rereading through 1 Corinthians, especially chapter 14, which we didn't get into in the message, I would love to hear your opinion on, or yours too, when Paul talks specifically about, hey, if you have the gift of tongues, if you're going to speak in tongues, there needs to be someone there who can interpret.
Yes.
But my brain went to well, how are you going to know if there's someone to interpret without somebody ever speaking in tongues first? It kind of seemed like which came
Now-
first, the chicken or the egg type of thing to me.
Now,
Yeah.
to clarify, though, before you
Yeah.
go further with that, you were talking about if you're going to be speaking in a public setting.
In a public setting.
Not if you're talking to yourself in prayer.
Right,
In,
right. In your own quiet,
I need to find an
intimate time with
interpreter to know what I'm praying about.
I'm about to worship the Lord. Can somebody help me? No. Yeah, if you were going to give a message in tongues, or you felt,
Yeah.
if there's some quiet, in our context would probably be at a night of worship or at a prayer meeting, and you feel this urge to say something out loud in tongues, Paul's pretty clear you need an interpreter, but at least in our context, I don't know who's an interpreter, and how would I ever know if somebody's an interpreter if somebody doesn't speak out in tongues first, and then somebody goes, I know what he says, let me share. You know what I mean? Like, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know. That part was just, that seemed odd to me as I was rereading it again.
Yeah, remember, you got to ask who is he writing? Who's he writing to? Why is he writing it?
So there's a lot of people doing that already.
There was, that church was established for quite a while. These people knew each other. They knew who interpreter was, and maybe for somebody else. But I think something we lose track of, that the church was probably 120 people or less, and these gatherings they knew each other. They knew each other well.
There wasn't 8 churches in one city.
Right.
It was just one.
Yeah, just
For
one.
sure.
They knew each other well. They knew who did have gifts and whatever. How they found that out, I have no idea. But, it is. And I think another thing that we don't take into consideration, and that is that it must be understandable. We have churches today that are built pretty sound tight. They're pretty dead. And if somebody's on one side, a church like ours, if somebody's on one side and they speak out, somebody on the other side cannot hear them clearly, then they're told not to, unless they have a microphone or that. And I think a lot of modern, Pentecostals get away from some of these things that are just practical. What good is it if you speak out and only half the people hear it? What good is it if you speak out and you don't know there's an
Prayer
interpreter
meetings,
there?
even if you're not speaking out in tongues, I've been in so many prayer meetings where
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're saying, so I'm just going to pray in my head.
Yeah.
It does no good.
Yeah. Back to the message. Did I answer your question?
Kinda.
I think that it was a small enough group. They knew each
We
other.
don't do that here.
So maybe
They knew each
we just
other.
don't do that stuff.
Who has a what
We're
I think
Pentecostals. We don't do that
We
weird
get
stuff.
off though, and nowadays a lot of Pentecostal movements, a lot of Pentecostal groups get off on the fact of. I've seen it 100 times. Somebody will give a message, a clear message in tongues, and hoping there's an interpreter there. I think Paul's basically that's his point. Is you should
Don't do
know
that.
if there's one. John, Bill, and Lori all have interpretation.
I think I said that in the service we didn't film. Man, I wish some Pentecostals would read 1 Corinthians 14 because I've been in so many meetings with people. And for some reason, it's always at the end of a worship song when they tell us to worship. And then everybody in the room, seems like everybody in the room just starts blabbering. I don't mean that but starts speaking out in tongues. And I think that's a pretty direct opposition of what Paul says to do. So what the heck?
Their argument would be that we're speaking out not intentionally for everybody to hear. We're just vocalizing. Sometimes in worship we say, use your own words to just worship God. And so
I'm just speaking for myself. I don't need anybody to hear.
a little loud.
Why are you
Yeah.
yelling 3 rows
Right.
behind me?
Yeah.
It's not a competition.
I do think that
Oh, it's so frustrating.
the pendulum swings one way or the other. Back specifically to the message, I really love.
Sorry, that was just a little
Let's corral the crazy here,
personal
okay?
hot button I
Yeah.
had to mention because I get frustrated with Pentecostals sometimes,
I hope
even though I
that-
am one.
I hope most of us hear it. It was just a passing comment almost, but I hope if you haven't watched it yet and you're going to watch it in a minute, watch for this when you said that the pendulum swings both directions, and sometimes the Corinthian church, the pendulum swung too far. Paul actually even wrote to them. We wouldn't even know this stuff except they had went
were
too
crazy.
far crazy with gifts of the Spirit. It was competition. They were talking over each other. It was more of this, excitement for each person, spiritual competition, all of that stuff. The gifts of the Holy Spirit were still being in operation, but they weren't being used in a way that was profitable or intentional for how the Holy Spirit. So Paul had to bring them back to line. Nowadays, it's so easy to use the Holy Spirit told me to cover up mental illness. Seriously. And you weren't making fun of it.
I'm not, no.
But,
I just have seen it enough.
I have seen it too, where, the Holy Spirit is not schizophrenic. He is not. And we've all seen people who, God told me this today, the Holy Spirit told me this today, and tomorrow, the Holy Spirit told me to go north. Now, that's the direction. He's called me north. And then tomorrow he's called me south. Well, which is it? And so we do have to really focus on purpose. What's this for? Clearly, it is to edify the mission, the people called to the mission for the purpose of making the mission more effective, encouraging, direction correcting, all this stuff for the mission to be more corrective. It's not just for, hobby's sake.
Yeah.
It's not because God's going to tell you what kind of soup to eat today. It's just not for that.
2 weeks ago when we talked about mission maintenance, I said, gosh, I could talk about the mission every single week. That was the part that stuck out to me most this week as I was preparing for this message, as I was reading through those portions again, like, holy cow, like, specifically the gift of faith. Well, we just tend to think like, okay, well, I've got great faith and God's going to, help me and I'm going to be good and like, I'll be fine. Well, that's not what it's for.
Right.
It's for the mission. And I think that's, to me, when any gift gets weird, it's because the purpose has been altered.
When it turns selfish, self-centered, that is really not what the Holy Spirit's about.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just not. Except for worshiping God in tongues is the only gift that is for personal edification. Faith is not for personal edification.
Yeah.
And when you described faith too, I think a way to understand faith is knowing that you know. It's no longer wishful thinking. You mentioned it's not positive thinking. It's knowing that you know that you know. And when you, and we've probably all had that gift at time or another in our life where I have absolute faith. I know what God said and what he's going to do. It's not, I got to repeat it. I'm going to stay positive. Don't say nothing negative.
Speak it into existence.
Yeah. It's just, I know that I know.
That fancy one.
And it doesn't, and another thing, we can differ in this a little bit, but I believe that all of those gifts are clearly through the Apostle Paul given to each one as the Holy Spirit determines. Everybody has a spiritual gift. However, not everybody, you mentioned this, sometimes that gift can be with you your whole life. Sometimes I think I've experienced 3 or 4 of those gifts at specific times when it's needed. Had it just for that moment. And it's not a lifelong thing.
Do you think some can be though?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's no formula though. You don't get one gift for your whole life and like
some may, but
not everybody.
Yeah, not everybody.
Sure. Yep.
And I think that we all can, this is where I might stretch a little bit. I think that we all can receive any gift of the Holy Spirit. If we're the only one there and God needs to do something, the Holy Spirit will give you that gift for that moment.
Yep. Nothing is off limits. It's just the Holy Spirit decides.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
The weird stuff.
The weird stuff.
Yep.
You can watch
Can
it
I
in a
comment
second.
on one more thing?
Sure. No.
Okay. I won't. That.
Just
Go
kidding.
for it.
Go ahead.
The fruit of the Spirit, we didn't talk about much. That didn't seem to fit in line with weird stuff. However, what you brought out, if we would just think about that, when you're watching this, just think about that longer, the direction you were going. That is weird today. That is not natural. And better supernatural than weird. It is supernatural to have peace in the midst of calamity. It is supernatural to have joy when all loss is in front of you. It is supernatural. It is a supernatural product of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, well, there you go. It's called The Weird Stuff. Watch that when it pops up. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back next week.
Yep.
With the final.
The final. Yes. Hey, I'm going to say this again. Please, please, please be here in person for this last week of the Holy Spirit. There's just some stuff that we can't do as well online. So you really owe it to yourself, and I think to everybody else that's going to be here as well. To be here in person.
There is not one biblical example of online ministry in the Bible.
Jeez.
Whoa! Well, this is going to be the last YouTube video we ever make because it ain't in the Bible.
Yeah.
What a waste of time this has been.
Oh, boy.
On that note,
On that wonderful
goodbye forever.